Hey, just waiting for some work stuff to render, so I thought I'd just show this quickly. So here's like a regular sort of a still life kind of thing. Assume this is a bowl of fruit and stuff. So this is just with the matcap mode. Now if I switch over to lit PBR, you get this kind of thing, which works, and you can rotate the light around and choose different ones. But it always tends to look very very flat. So in terms of trying to sort of boost this up and make it look a bit more kind of appealing, there's a few things you can do. One is that I try to find matcaps where this kind of represents all the light without the sun in it, of which the built-in ones, it's probably this one is probably the most effective, where the actual like sunspot itself is kind of obscured, so you can kind of rotate this around to get sort of a nice sort of general shaping of your objects. But really, you need a light source. So I'm going to go add lights, and this adds a default sunlight, which is sort of infinitely far away. I tend to swap this over to a spotlight, so this way I can get a bit more shaping. So I'm going to put it up and away. I'm going to use the green handle and drag it down onto here. It's a nice way to sort of target it, because this will snap onto surfaces. Let's go like that. And then I'm going to narrow the cone of the light just a little bit, and then give it a softness, so I can sort of make it look a bit more art directed. But you can see here there's an issue where the spotlight itself is being, I guess, overwhelmed by the environment light. So if I were to turn off the environment light, you can see what that looks like by itself. So that's a bit more moody, but everything else is kind of washing out to too much black. So what you want is kind of a compromise. You want a bit of both. So I'm going to make that softer. I'm going to make it sort of hit most things, but sort of fall off a little bit, like that. Maybe even a little bit softer and narrower, like that. Oops. Maybe like that. Let's go to that. Yeah. So that's kind of nice bit of sort of rounding and shaping of the objects. And then return the environment light back on, and this is just meant to sort of like fill in the blacks, really. So I might turn that exposure right down, just so it's there but it's not there. So like that. But really, what you also want for a finished render is something that looks a bit more photographic. And so you can do that through the post-processing menu. So if you go to post-processing and turn it on, so I've made a point before of going to standard and none again, just to reset it to nothing. So you can turn these things on one by one and see what it actually does. Make that a bit bigger. So if we go to post-processing, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on global illumination, which will simulate kind of light bouncing between surfaces to get more kind of light bleed. So if I turn that on, see straight away you get a lot more of this fill, but it's now reduced contrast. Like, it's great to have all this bounce, but it's too much going on. So I'm going to back to the environment light, and I turn this exposure down again until it's it's having an effect on the darkest parts, but not so much that it's sort of like fighting with the spotlight. So something like, say, that, and I'll rotate it around so that it feels kind of roughly balanced, maybe like that. The next thing you can do is if you go to tone mapping and turn this on. So this is, at its simplest, it's kind of begins to emulate how cameras receive light. So film cameras receive light in a certain way that we associate with things looking very sort of filmy. If you turn it on, you'll see that you get a bit more contrast. It looks a bit more appealing generally. And from here, you can now adjust the exposure to get the kind of fall off you want. So what I might also do is I'm going to go to the background tab and change the color and make that be basically almost black. So make it a lot darker. Oops, darker still, like that. And then I'm going to start to play with this some more. So I might also, you can see that I've got lots of noise in the image. So to fix that, I'm going to go up to the top here, max frame sampling, and turn that up to, say, like at least 100, probably more. And I'm also going to turn up the sampling multiplier. So normally when I'm going for final renders, I'll push it up to, like, say, 1.5 or 2, so you can see you get a much finer grain. But of course, so what happens is this is kind of calculating and recalculating, and it's averaging the values together. If you still get noise, you got to push this number up higher. So, and you just let it sort of sit and calculate for a while until it cleans up. Now I'm getting a bit of sort of banding and stuff, and that's probably because I've got dithering turned off right at the bottom. Oh, no, dithering's on. So then you just start to add more of these things until it starts to feel real. A side effect of the GI is that it tends to wash out creases and crevices, which you can get looking a bit dark and accurate again by turning on ambient occlusion. So if I turn that on, you can see now these that bit there under the platonic solid starts to go a bit darker. And anywhere where surfaces meet will go darker as well. So you can adjust the strength and the curvature bias and the size of it, so that you kind of get what feels like sort of like kind of proper contact shadows between things, and you fade it back till it feels about right. So maybe like that. Bloom is always good for getting a bit of that sort of photographic highlight. It's a bit intense in this one, so I'm going to turn that right down. It's just so it's adding a bit of sort of halo around things, but not too much. Contrast and saturation you can also dial in. So if this is like, so you can see that as I push this saturation up, you get more of this sort of color tinting across the back here, which is kind of cool. I sometimes use a bit of curvature to pull out highlights, but I think I'll leave that off in this case. And then the other one is a bit of sharpness can help. So just it's like a fake Photoshop filter for sharpening, which can actually help to bring things out a bit more. And the other one, in terms of your case, for sort of fruit and organic things, is to use subsurface. So let's say I want something a bit more. Just go for all of them. So let's go with, say, this guy. No, let's go this one, for example. So if I change between the opaque shader and the subsurface shader, you can see straight away you get this red highlight, where if it falls into the shadow side and the shape is narrow, you get a bit of color bleed. Really useful for fruit and tentacles and anything organic. So I might even just turn that on for everything. So I'm going to just choose everything apart from the base, I think. Yep, and turn on subsurface. And then dial in the amount. So I might, whoops, back to materials. So if you turn the depth up, it makes it more subsurfacey. If you turn it down, it makes it less subsurfacey. I could even change the color. So rather than it sort of getting this red tint, make it more of a neutral tone, to just make it a bit softer. So that's kind of that. So I'm going to need more samples again. So go back up to post-processing and turn that up to all the way, and turn the global illumination slider up to full. And now we've got something that's a bit softer. The last thing I do is on the light source, you can turn on soft shadows. So over here under shadow, I'm going to turn on softness, and the 30 is a bit extreme, but down to like say 7, just to get some of these shadows here a bit softer. So if I turn that off and on again, so that's with sharp shadows, that's with soft shadows. So that's kind of what I do. It's a very sort of like quick thing, but it generally makes sort of a much sort of softer, warmer, appealing image, especially in that sort of vibe of a still life. Hope that helps.